Arthur Fils just went toe-to-toe with Carlos Alcaraz, and when the press asked for his take on battling the world number one, he skipped the usual cliches about a tough match or a learning curve. Instead, he dropped a truth bomb that perfectly illustrates exactly why. The entire field from rank 3 down to 50 is essentially fighting over crumbs. One simple line exposes the secret sauce keeping Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner in a league of their own. From the very first ball, it goes incredibly fast and puts you under immense pressure. That is the defining gap. It isn't raw talent or brute strength, it is suffocating pressure from point one, with zero let-up. Grasp the weight of that statement, and you understand why the rest of the tour is hopeless. These two are absolutely relentless from the opening serve. That is the nuclear option that renders Alcaraz and Sinner virtually invincible against anyone but each other. But let's unpack that. Because, let's face it, every pro on the tour can crush the ball. Every guy in the top 50 has weapons. Any player in the top 30 has taken down a top 10 giant before. So, what makes the pressure from Alcaraz and Sinner so unique? Fils, having clashed with Alcaraz 3 times and studied Sinner like a hawk, possesses a rare vantage point. He has the skill to deconstruct their game plan. He has the experience to describe it, and the brutal honesty to confess he is nowhere near that level yet, not even close. That is stunning transparency from a 21-year-old fresh off an ATP final and sitting comfortably in the top 40. Most guys would bluff, claiming they are right on the cusp, insisting it is just a matter of time. But Fils is serving straight facts. A massive void exists between his game and the altitude where Alcaraz and Sinner cruise. And that void is carved out by the pressure applied from the very first shot. We need to dissect what this pressure looks like in the real world, because it is far more complex than just hitting the cover off the ball. Plenty of guys have power. Fils hits like a truck, so does Alexander Zverev, so does Holger Rune. However, the squeeze Alcaraz and Sinner put on you is a different beast entirely. It starts with the serve. Both of these titans are racking up free points on their serve at a frequency that defies logic. During the Doha final, Alcaraz landed 82% of his first serves and won nearly 90% of those points. That gives the opponent absolutely nothing to work with. That is winning the psychological war before the rally even begins. When you realize the server is locking down 9 out of 10 points behind a first serve, you start panicking on the return. You take wild gambles. You feel desperate before the match has even found its rhythm. Sinner plays the exact same mind game. While his serve doesn't get the headlines his ground strokes do, he constantly harvests easy points or forces weak returns he can instantly punish. It is the suffocating weight of the return game. Knowing you must break their serve to survive warps every choice you make. Then, look at their court positioning. Both Alcaraz and Sinner camp out absurdly close to the baseline to receive. They aren't drifting back a few feet like the rest of the pack. They are practically standing inside the paint, taking the ball on the rise and stealing every millisecond of reaction time from their opponent. That stance is a declaration of war. I won't let you lead. I'm taking your best shot and shoving you onto the back foot immediately. Most players physically cannot do this. It demands god-tier reflexes, court awareness, and unshakable belief. You have to read the serve before it leaves the strings. You have to trust your hands can handle that velocity. You have to accept you might get aced because you dared to stand so boldly. But when it clicks, and for these two, it usually does. It shatters the server's spirit, leaving them defending for their lives despite hitting quality serves. Third, consider the chaos once the ball is in play. This is where Fils's comment about speed really shines a light on the issue. It isn't just that Alcaraz and Sinner hit with pace, though they certainly do. It is the unholy trinity of depth, spin, and speed. That mix is fatal. Most power hitters trade depth for speed. They swing for the fences, but the ball lands short or sails long. Alcaraz and Sinner somehow refuse to compromise. They paint lines within inches of the baseline while generating heavy topspin and velocity, leaving opponents with zero time and zero good choices. You can't step in, the ball is too deep. You can't wait, the topspin will eat you alive. You are perpetually off balance, scrambling instead of playing. Finally, look at their transition game. Both men are predators who know exactly when to close the net. They aren't baseline campers waiting for a mistake. They hunt for the short ball and charge. The shots they hit on the run are precise and devastating. This means opponents cannot simply survive the rally and pray for an unforced error. You have to play perfect defense, because the moment you drop a ball short, you are dead. Arthur Fils felt the burn of this reality in Doha. Leave a ball even a fraction short, not distinctly short, just not painting the baseline, and you are. Carlos Alcaraz would instantly step inside the court, seize command of the rally, and likely finish you off at the net. The burden of needing laser-guided precision on every single stroke drains you, body and soul. Then comes factor number 5. This is the specific playground where Alcaraz reigns supreme. Jannik Sinner has added this flair to his repertoire as well-feathered drop shots, sky-high lobs, sharp angles, and the skill to switch from heavy topspin to flat missiles in a heartbeat. With that kind of mix, you can never find a groove. You can't brace for the heavy spin because he might just slice it low. You can't dig in at the back fence because he'll kill the ball dead with a drop shot. That guessing game breeds hesitation, which applies a suffocating pressure all its own. Phils hinted at this chaos. When he described the game moving at warp speed, it wasn't just the velocity of the ball, but how quickly the tactical landscape. 1 second you are scrambling at the back wall, the next you are dashing for a dropper, and then you are lunging for a cross. That relentless yo-yoing across the court fries your brain because you are in a constant state of emergency, never settled. Factor number 6 is the mindset. Both young titans possess iron will when the stakes are highest. They don't choke. They don't hesitate. They keep the pedal to the metal even when the score is tight, telling their rival, "I'm not giving you anything for free." You have to rip the win from their hands. You must go to war for every single game, You can't bank on a meltdown. Arthur saw this when Carlos was serving for the match at 5-3 in the first set of their semi-final against Rublev. Carlos dropped his serve there, sure, but he turned right around and broke back instantly. Zero fear, zero nerves, just pure suffocating offense until the handshake. That bounce-back ability, that refusal to let the tide turn, is terrifying to face. And finally, number 7, the engine. Both Alcaraz and Sinner can redline their engines for marathon stretches. They don't burst out of the gate and gasp for air later. They go full throttle from the first ball to the last, so matching their fire early doesn't mean you can wait for them to burn out. You have to play the match of your life for the entire duration, which drains every ounce of energy you have. When Arthur admitted he wasn't quite at that tier yet, this is the gap he was describing. It is not just hitting shots. It is having the lungs and legs to do it perfectly for 2 to 3 hours straight, a level of conditioning that towers above the tour average. Drawing parallels to the Big Three is not just hype, it is necessary to understand the evolution we are witnessing. What Carlos and Jannik are showcasing echoes Roger, Rafa, and Novak, only they are doing it sooner and with a modern twist. Federer suffocated you with his spot serving, and that lightning-fast forehand that stole your time. Nadal ground you into dust with heavy, bounding spin and relentless depth. Djokovic broke your spirit with his wall-like defense and mental steel. The new duo has merged all 3 playbooks. They possess Roger's serve placement, Rafa's heavy artillery, and Novak's unbreakable mind and coverage. That hybrid style makes them juggernauts, but the truly nightmare fuel is their age. They are dominating at 22 and 23. The legends didn't hit that peak of sustained power until their mid-20s. These kids are shattering the developmental timeline, meaning they might get even scarier as they grow up. Arthur gets it. When he says Carlos is alien-like and playing on another planet, he is not just being gracious in defeat. It is a cold, hard fact from a pro who knows exactly how wide the canyon is between good and great. And remember, Arthur is no slouch. He is incredibly gifted and has taken down giants. He has firepower, yet even he sees that he is chasing a ghost. The locker room is scratching their heads because the old blueprints are useless. You cannot out-rally them. They don't miss. You can't hit through them because they hit harder and aim better, and you can't outsmart them. Their court IQ is genius level, and you can't tire them out because their fitness is supreme, so what is left? Some guys try to redline it, swinging for the fences on every shot to blow them off the court before a rhythm sets in. That might steal you a set, but good luck keeping that up for a best-of-3 or best-of-5 war. Others try to push, hoping to turn into a wall and force errors. But Carlos and Jannik just smile, build the point, and rip a winner into the open court. The only man who seems to have the answer is the other one. Carlos edges Jannik by cranking the aggression dial and mixing the chaotic spin. Sinner dismantles Alcaraz by being a wall of consistency and robbing him of time before he can even blink. They drive each other to the absolute brink of exhaustion because literally no one else on tour can handle their intensity. The rest of the field is left chasing ghosts, trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't have a solution yet, and Phils is brutally honest about it. I have mountains to climb because I am simply not there yet. That isn't defeatism. That is realizing that catching them demands a total metamorphosis. You don't just tweak your game a little and suddenly find yourself trading blows with Alcaraz and Sinner. You have to completely reconstruct your existence on the court. The serve must evolve into a reliable weapon of mass destruction. You have to step in on the return, which means your reflexes and anticipation need to be superhuman. Ground strokes need to be deeper and heavier without dropping a mile of speed, while the transition game must be lethal. You need a massive arsenal that never misfires and a mental fortitude that is absolutely bulletproof. Your fitness has to be god tier. We are not talking about a 6-month sprint, but years of grinding in the dark. And even after all that, there is no promise of victory because Sinner and Alcaraz are not waiting for you. They are evolving every day, moving the finish line further away. Fortunately, Fils is only 21. He has Goran Ivanisevic in his corner now, a man who knows exactly what glory costs, and he has the physical engine. He has the heart of a champion, but even with those gifts, he is staring down a gap that will take years to close. And he knows it deep in his bones. The ripple effect for the sport is massive, because if these two hold this pace, we are looking at a decade where they just swap Grand Slam trophies. They have split the last 9 majors between them, and if no one else learns to survive their early onslaught, this dynasty will last forever. Some fans are already grinding their teeth at the thought of a duopoly. They crave chaos and fresh faces, but the reality is that we are watching history being written in real time. 2 prodigies in their early 20s playing tennis that rivals the absolute peaks of the sport's greatest legends. That isn't boring, that is electrifying. The way Fils speaks reveals his own warrior spirit. Despite getting obliterated in the final and admitting he is miles behind, he is still fighting, still grinding, still believing he can scale that mountain, and that is the only mindset that works. The moment you accept that the chasm is too wide to cross, you have already lost. The crushing pressure Sinner and Alcaraz apply, instant, relentless, and coming from everywhere, is the new gold standard. You cannot just rely on one big shot anymore. You need the full package, and you must pull the trigger from the very first point. Maintaining red line intensity for hours without giving your opponent a single gasp of air. That is the great divider. That is why Fils was dismantled in 50 minutes despite playing decent tennis by normal standards. That is why 13 of Alcaraz's last 14 tournaments have ended with him playing for the title on Sunday. That is why Sinner remains a nightmare for opponents, even when he is technically. That suffocating pressure from ball 1, never easing up, never letting you think that is the secret sauce. And Arthur Fils, in his raw post-match confession, nailed it. The game moves at warp speed, heavy and flawless from the jump. Calling it quite challenging is the understatement of the century. It is not just hard, it is borderline impossible. Until someone cracks that code or invents a new way to neutralize it, Sinner and Alcaraz will sit alone on the throne. The psychological damage inflicted by that pressure cannot be ignored. When Fils talks about speed, he isn't talking about the radar. He is talking about how fast your strategy evaporates, how quickly your confidence shatters, and the sudden realization that you are doomed. Every player has plan A, their bread and butter that wins matches against 90% of the tour. Against mortals, you switch to plan B if things go wrong, but against these two, plan A is incinerated before you can even use it. And forget about plans B and C, you simply don't have the time or space to find them. That is exactly what happened to Fils in Doha. He walked out with a clear battle plan. Unleash the forehand, stay aggressive, hit on the rise, and charge the net whenever possible. Solid tactics. But Alcaraz's pressure meant Fils never even got to set up the... He was stuck reacting, scrambling, and surviving from the opening bell, and once you are in that hole against the elite, there is no escape. This creates a nightmare scenario back in the training room. If you are a coach trying to prep a guy ranked somewhere between 20 and 50, how do you even simulate that? You cannot just conjure up an Alcaraz or a Sinner on a practice court. Even the deadliest sparring partners on the planet cannot replicate that suffocating, non-stop pressure. Trading shots with a top 100 pro simply won't get you ready for that lethal cocktail of speed, precision, variety, and sheer ferocity that defines the two kings of the sport. Consequently, these challengers are walking into the slaughterhouse completely blind to the reality awaiting them. Sure, their brains know the top 2 are beasts. They have dissected the tapes and memorized the playbooks. But until your sneakers are squeaking on that court, until you feel the oxygen sucked out of the arena and realize you have zero time to breathe, until you realize every escape route is cut off and your legs are burning from endless, desperate defense, you simply cannot grasp the size of the chasm. By the time that brutal lesson sinks in, the match is already slipping through your fingers. Fils has tasted that bitter medicine now, but the price of admission was getting crushed in a championship match he was hungry to claim. If he ever stares down Alcaraz across the net again, his head will be in a better place to withstand the mental siege. But the real mystery is whether his body and his racket can evolve enough to actually survive the encounter. That is the burning question. And the financial side of this monopoly is just as terrifying because tennis pays out like a pyramid scheme where the summit takes all the... If the Spaniard and the Italian keep hoarding every trophy, they are not just stacking silverware on a shelf. They are vacuuming up the lion's share of the purses, the mega sponsorships, and the commercial spotlight. It fuels a vicious cycle. Unlimited budgets for recovery, science, and elite teams that guarantee they stay miles ahead of the pack. Meanwhile, the guys scrapping from rank 3 down to 50 are fighting over crumbs, earning a tiny fraction of that wealth, which means bargain bin coaching and fewer resources to build their athletic engines. It is the classic story of the rich getting filthy rich while the gap explodes. Fils is actually one of the lucky ones. He has deep pockets behind him, and a legend like Ivanisevic in his corner luxuries most kids his age can only... Yet even with those golden tickets, he is climbing a vertical wall against rivals who possess god-tier talent fueled by god-tier budget. Looking back at the history books sheds some serious light on this too. The big three did not just rise, they stood on each other's shoulders. Federer forced Nadal to evolve. Nadal sharpened Djokovic's blade, and Djokovic pushed both of them to the brink. That three-way war elevated the entire sport to the stratosphere for 15 years. We are seeing that exact same chemical reaction between Alcaraz and Sinner right now. They are rocketing each other to levels that shouldn't exist, while everyone else is left choking on their exhaust fumes in a lopsided arms race. It is not just raw skill separating number 2 from number 3. It is the lack of a nemesis to drive that evolution. Without a monster at your heels, the chasing pack is just sparring with each other, never forced to unlock that next dimension. It leaves us in a bizarre spot where the peak of tennis is blindingly bright, but the rest of the field feels like it is fading into the dark. When the two titans clash, it is poetry in motion, but watching them dismantle the rest of the tour is starting to look like a ritual sacrifice. That is fantastic news for the new kings, but it spells trouble for the drama of the sport and the health of the competitive jungle. That suffocating pressure, Fils talked about instant, unending, attacking from all angles, only works if you have the tank to endure it. At this moment, only 2 men on Earth have built the engine required to run that race. The rest are scrambling to catch a train that is already speeding away and accelerating by the day. Do not forget the age gap or lack thereof. Fils is 21. Alcaraz is 22. Sinner is 23. They are essentially classmates. Yet the distance between the Frenchmen and the leaders feels like they are from different eras, not just different birthdays. It shows just how violently paths can diverge at the absolute peak of the game. A few years of varying coaching voices, training bets, and tactical gambles, and suddenly peers who grew up together are playing 2 different sports. The ultimate riddle is whether this canyon is permanent, or if a talent like Fils can build a bridge across it. The archives say there is a chance, but it is a slim one. Andy Murray eventually cracked the code of the Big Three, but it took a lifetime of grind to snatch just 3 majors. Stan Wawrinka found a way to bully through them on his best days and grabbed 3 slams of his own. But those are the outliers, the rare anomalies. Most who start in the rearview mirror never pull even, no matter the sweat equity. What makes the reign of Alcaraz and Sinner so terrifying is that they are locking down the throne before they have even hit their prime. The legendary Big Three didn't truly lock down that kind of suffocating dominance until they were well into their mid-20s. Yet here you have Alcaraz and Sinner tearing it up at ages 22 and 23, meaning they are staring down a solid decade of physical supremacy. We could legitimately see them racking up 20 or 25 slams apiece. That isn't hype, it is just the ruthless math of their current trajectory. For a rising contender like Fils, that timeline is nothing short of a nightmare scenario. Even if he closes the distance in 3 or 4 years, forging the arsenal to fight them, those two will have already swept up another 10 to 15 majors by then. The door to history is practically slamming shut before he has even stepped onto the porch. He is fighting a clock that is ticking faster than his development can possibly keep up with. It is a massive headache for any coach, because how do you teach a player to manufacture the sheer heaviness of ball that Alcaraz and Sinner produce? You are talking about tearing the house down and rebuilding the entire philosophy of his game from the ground up. Everything from the serve to the transition game to the psychological steel requires years of grueling, systematic reconstruction with zero promise of a payout. Even Ivanisevic, who is now in Phil's corner, knows the score better than anyone. He guided Djokovic to half a dozen major titles. He knows exactly what championship pressure smells like and how to forge it in a player. But even with that pedigree, molding Phil's into a warrior who can stand toe-to-toe with that duo requires time and absolute perfection in execution. And the terrifying part? While they build, Alcaraz and Sinner won't be stagnant targets. They will be evolving and getting deadlier. Arthur Fils is only 21 years old, blessed with raw gifts, a grinder's mentality, and now elite mentorship. Perhaps he is the anomaly who solves the puzzle, forging the weapons and the iron will to equal their intensity. Maybe in 3 years, the headlines will scream about a new Big Three rather than a two-horse race. But in the cold light of today, after being dismantled in a final and speaking candidly, Fils exposed the harsh reality. Alcaraz and Sinner are operating on a frequency that fundamentally warps the geometry of the match from the very first ball. And until a challenger finds the lungs to match that pace, those two are going to devour every trophy in sight.